Yesterday we left it at how the religious leaders in Jerusalem were more than ever committed to have Jesus killed. And the only thing that held him back from arresting him and charging him for blasphemy, for all the things that he had said about himself in relation to God, was the fact that many people believed that he was indeed the Messiah, who would rescue them from the bondage of the Romans, and that there were huge crowds of people who followed Jesus wherever he went. The fear of the crowd turning against them if they arrested Jesus kept them away from doing what they would have loved to do: arrest Jesus. But they were always on the lookout for an opportune time to turn the same crowds against Jesus. And Wednesday presented the long-awaited chance. An opportunity gladly presented itself without them having to look for it. It was on the Wednesday before his death that Jesus was betrayed. He was in Bethany, in the house of a man called Simon, whom people referred to as Simon the leper. A woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. This is totally unacceptable." The disciples must have thought that they were talking on behalf of Jesus when they protested about the woman's wastage. They had walked with Jesus and had come to know him as a simple man who was content with the little that he had. And they were sure that if Jesus had known about the expensive oil before she broke the jar, he would have advised her to give it to the treasurer, for it to be sold and the money given to the poor. Aware of this, Jesus surprisingly said to them, Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me." And this must have taken them all by surprise. It was the second, maybe the third strange thing that Jesus was doing within a short period of time. First, he had chosen to ride into Jerusalem on a donkey and not walk as was his norm. Secondly, as he entered Jerusalem, he had acknowledged the wide cheer and jubilation he received from the crowd, calling him Son of David, King of the Jews, and refused to ask the people to stop celebrating him when the Pharisees asked him to do so. This was a totally new Jesus from the one they knew. And his new self was acting very different from what they were used to. they were used to Jesus, who would heal people and then request them to tell no one about what he had done to them, as well as a Jesus who would slip away from those who tried to forcefully make him a king. The new Jesus who was now appreciating celebrations and titles being bestowed upon him, it was beginning to look rather strange. And now for him to entertain so much money being spent on him, And as they were thinking, Jesus continued talking and said, when this lady poured the expensive perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. None of the disciples understood what he had just said, and mainly because at that time, in their opinion, he was the biggest thing happening in Jerusalem, and not just Jerusalem, but the entire country. He was trending across the whole nation and neighboring countries, and nothing could have been as far from them as his death. Everyone, or should I say almost everyone, was looking forward to him rising to the throne and be crowned King of the Jews. His death was the last thing on their minds. If only they knew what was cooking. Back to the expensive perfume. The huge amount of money the lady spent on anointing Jesus with her expensive perfume rubbed Judas Iscariot the wrong way. Judas was one of the 12 men Jesus had appointed to be his disciples. Being the disciple who had been entrusted to handle the group's finances, he found it unacceptable, totally unacceptable, that Jesus would allow all that money to be wasted on himself. And he was not going to take that seated. He was offended, and he decided he was going to punish Jesus. But what really annoyed Judas was the fact that the perfume would have fetched a lot of money had it been sold. And that money would have presented him with a good opportunity to enrich himself, for he used to steal from the kitty. He was a thief. From that time onwards, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand over Jesus to the Jewish leaders as his way of getting Jesus punished. His anger therefore presented the opportunity that the Jewish leaders had been waiting for all along to arrest Jesus. Judas went over to the chief priests and asked them what they were willing to give him if he handed over Jesus to them. And they counted out for him 30 silver coins. What Judas did not know was that the money he accepted to betray Jesus was the exact amount of money the prophets of old had prophesied the Messiah would be betrayed for. However, this and much more that happened over this last week of Jesus before his death was only understood after his death and resurrection. The actual arresting of Jesus by the Jewish leaders did not happen until the following day, Thursday. But it was on Wednesday that Judas went to the Jewish leaders to sell off Jesus to them. And that is why Wednesday is normally referred to as Spy Wednesday. It is the day that Judas was used to spy on Jesus and get him arrested by the Jewish leaders. Join me tomorrow as we continue with the journey of Jesus to Calvary.